What if I told you that one of television's most beloved mothers sacrificed her career at its peak to protect an entire generation of black children? And that when she died, her net worth shocked everyone who knew her. This is the untold story of Esther Rolle, the woman who turned her back on fame when she had everything to lose, and whose abandoned home holds secrets that will change how you see Hollywood forever. We all remember Florida Evans from Good Times, that warm, strong mother who held her family together through impossible circumstances. But the real woman behind that iconic character was far more complex and courageous than anyone imagined. She was a fierce warrior who battled Hollywood executives, challenged damaging stereotypes, and paid the ultimate price for standing up for what she believed in. What made this trailblazing actress walk away from millions of dollars and guaranteed fame? What shocking discovery was found in her forgotten home after she died? And how did a woman who helped change television history end up spending her final years in relative obscurity? Esther Rolle's story begins in a place that would shock most people. Born on November 8, 1920, in Pompano Beach, Florida, she entered the world as the 10th child in a family of 18 children. Yes, you heard that right, 18 children. Her parents, Jonathan Rolle and Elizabeth Dames Rolle, were immigrants from the Bahamas who created something extraordinary in their humble home. Imagine growing up in a household where 18 personalities competed for attention, where dinner conversations were louder than most concerts, and where every day brought new chaos and unexpected joy. This wasn't just a large family, it was a small community unto itself, and it shaped Esther in ways that would later make her one of the most principled actresses in Hollywood history. From her earliest days, Esther showed a natural talent for performing. She would dance and act with her siblings in church plays and school productions across Florida. But unlike many child performers who craved the spotlight, Esther was drawn to the deeper meaning behind the performances. She understood, even then, that stories had power, the power to heal, to inspire, and to change minds. This early understanding of storytelling's impact would later drive every decision she made in her career, even when those decisions cost her everything. After finishing high school, Esther's thirst for knowledge led her on a journey that most people from her background couldn't even dream of. She attended Spelman College in Atlanta, but her ambitions were too big for any one institution. She moved to New York City and enrolled at Hunter College, then continued her studies at several prestigious institutions, including Yale University. This woman wasn't just talented, she was brilliant, determined, and absolutely refused to accept limitations that others tried to place on her. In New York, she joined an African dance troupe called Shogola Oloba, and her natural leadership abilities quickly made her stand out. By 1960, she had become the director of the entire troupe, a position that taught her how to fight for artistic integrity, a skill she would desperately need later in Hollywood. Around this time, she married Oscar Robinson and lovingly embraced his daughter from a previous marriage as her own. This experience of becoming a mother figure would profoundly influence her later portrayal of Florida Evans and her fierce protection of how black families were represented on screen. The stage was calling her name, and in 1962, Esther made her New York stage debut in a provocative play called The Blacks. This wasn't just any performance, it was a bold statement about race and identity that challenged audiences to confront their prejudices. 10 years later, she earned critical praise for her role as Miss Mabel in the Broadway musical Don't Play Us Cheap. But television producers were starting to notice this powerful performer, and her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. What happened next would make her one of the most important figures in television history, and set the stage for the battles that would define her legacy. On September 12, 1972, a new show called Maude premiered on CBS, and television would never be the same. This spin-off of All in the Family starred Bea Arthur as Maude Findlay, a strong-willed feminist character who wasn't afraid to speak her mind. But among all the memorable characters, one stood out in a way that surprised everyone: Florida Evans, the maid who provided wisdom and grounding to Maude's outspoken liberal views. Esther Rolle didn't just play Florida Evans, she inhabited her, bringing dignity and strength to a character that could have easily become another stereotype. Viewers didn't just watch Florida, they fell in love with her. She became the heart and soul of many episodes. The character who reminded everyone what really mattered when the world seemed to be spinning out of control. The audience connection was so powerful that CBS executives made a decision that would change television history forever. In 1974, they launched a spin-off called Good Times, placing Florida Evans at the center of her own story. This wasn't just another sitcom, it was revolutionary. Good Times became the first network sitcom to focus on a two-parent Black American family, breaking barriers that had stood for decades. But here's where the story takes a shocking turn. Esther Rolle understood the weight of what she was carrying. She wasn't just playing a character, she was representing millions of Black families across America who had never seen themselves portrayed with dignity and respect on television. The responsibility was crushing, and she felt every single pound of it. Originally, the show's creators wanted to portray Florida as a single mother, perpetuating the harmful stereotype that Black fathers were absent or uncaring. But Esther Rolle refused to accept this concept. She looked those CBS executives in the eye and said something that would echo through television history. "I told them I couldn't compound the lie that Black fathers don't care about their children." She insisted that her character must have a husband, and she fought those executives until they agreed. This wasn't just about her character, it was about changing harmful narratives that had dominated American entertainment for generations. Her insistence on having a strong father figure in the Evans household was groundbreaking, and it showed her commitment to authentic representation, even when it meant going to war with the most powerful people in television. Good Times became an instant hit, but success brought unexpected challenges. The character of J.J. Evans, played by Jimmy Walker, quickly became a fan favorite with his signature catchphrase, "Dynamite." Audiences loved his humor and energy, and the writers began crafting more and more storylines around his comedic antics. But Esther Rolle and John Amos, who played JJ's father, watched in horror as the show's focus shifted. What had started as a program about a strong Black family dealing with real issues was slowly transforming into a comedy centered on JJ's exaggerated behavior. While other characters like Michael and Thelma had dreams and ambitions, Michael wanted to become a lawyer. Thelma dreamed of being a surgeon. JJ was increasingly portrayed as a jobless, aspiring artist who existed mainly for laughs. For Esther Rolle, this shift was devastating. She had fought so hard to create positive representation, and now she watched as her own show seemed to be sliding backward into harmful stereotypes. The woman who had sacrificed so much for dignity was being forced to watch as her creation was twisted into something she couldn't recognize. She spoke out publicly about her concerns, giving an interview to Ebony magazine that would be quoted for decades. Her words were sharp, passionate, and devastatingly honest. "He's 18 and he doesn't work. He can't read or write. He doesn't think." The show didn't start out to be that. Little by little, they have made JJ more stupid and enlarged the role. Negative images have been slipped in on us through the character of the oldest child. "I resent the imagery that says to Black kids that you can make it by standing on the corner saying, 'Dynamite.'" But she didn't stop there. Her next words would echo through Hollywood's halls of power. "I did not agree to do a clown show for you to degrade young Black men." These weren't just the words of a frustrated actress, they were the battle cry of a woman who understood that television had the power to shape minds and that she had a responsibility to use that power wisely. Differences between Esther Rolle, John Amos, and the show's producers became impossible to resolve. The result was shocking. John Amos was let go from the show and didn't return for the fourth season. The writers handled his departure by creating one of the most emotional episodes in television history. At the start of season 4, viewers learned that James Evans had died in a car accident while searching for better job opportunities in Mississippi. The episode delivered one of the most powerful moments in sitcom history, Florida Evans's heartbreaking outburst as she processed her grief. Damn, damn, damn. The raw emotion that Esther Rolle brought to that scene became an iconic moment that viewers still remember decades later. But the problems didn't end there. The writers introduced a new character, Carl Dixon, played by Moses Gunn, to serve as Florida's new love interest. Esther Rolle was deeply uncomfortable with this storyline, feeling that it betrayed everything Florida Evans represented. The relationship felt forced and disrespectful to the foundation that had been built over previous seasons. By the end of Season 4, Esther Rolle had reached her breaking point. She made a decision that shocked fans and industry insiders alike. She would leave Good Times at the height of its success. In the story, Florida married Carl off-screen and moved to Arizona, leaving viewers heartbroken and the show without its most important character. With both Esther Rolle and John Amos gone, the Evans family was left without its parental figures. The show struggled to find its identity, and ratings began to decline throughout Season 5. Steve Mills, CBS's vice president of programming, later admitted the painful truth. We had lost the essence of the show. Without parental guidance, the show slipped. Everything told us, our mail, our phone calls, our research, we felt we had to go back to the basics. Recognizing their mistake, the producers did something unprecedented. They begged Esther Rolle to return. She agreed, but only under very specific conditions that showed just how much power she had accumulated through her principled stand. Second, she negotiated for a significantly higher salary. Third, she insisted that Carl Dixon never be mentioned again. When Florida returned to the show, there was only a brief reference to her second husband. A neighbor mentioned him, and Florida simply shook her head and smiled quietly, signaling that Carl had lost his battle with cancer. Beyond that moment, he was never brought up again, and Florida kept the Evans surname. Despite Esther Rolle's return and the changes meant to restore the show's original spirit, it was too late. Good Times ended after its 6th season, but its impact on television history was undeniable. While Good Times made her famous, Esther Rolle's talents extended far beyond sitcom acting. She explored music, releasing an album titled The Garden of My Mind, while still starring on the show. She appeared in numerous dramatic films and television movies, earning critical acclaim for her versatility. In 1979, she won an Emmy Award for her powerful performance in Summer of My German Soldier, proving that she was far more than just a sitcom actress. Other notable credits included roles in Driving Miss Daisy, Rosewood, and I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. In a 1990 interview, Esther Rolle shared the philosophy that guided every decision she made. Speaking to the Washington Informer, she explained, "I'm glad to take on the role of a domestic because many of your black leaders, your educators, your professionals came from domestic parents who made sacrifices to see that their children didn't go through what they did." This quote reveals the depth of her understanding about representation and the importance of portraying all types of black characters with dignity and respect. She saw her work not just as entertainment, but as a form of activism that could change hearts and minds. What most people never knew about Esther Rolle was the extent of her generosity. She used her success not for personal extravagance, but to uplift others, especially within the black community. Before her passing, she made a donation of over $100,000 to help sustain a struggling black theater company in Los Angeles. She also quietly supported educational initiatives, funding scholarships for students attending historically black colleges and universities. Her philanthropy was never about seeking headlines. It reflected the values she lived by: integrity, community, and a responsibility to open doors for others. Esther Rolle's Los Angeles home reflected who she truly was: unpretentious, grounded, and connected to her roots. It wasn't a sprawling mansion, but a comfortable, well-loved house that offered peace and privacy. The single-story structure featured soft earth tones with a simple front porch, framed by plants she tended herself. Inside, the home was filled with personal touches: family photographs, framed awards, African art pieces, and shelves lined with books and scripts, where she entertained friends and neighbors, cooking traditional dishes and creating a space for conversation and community. Since her passing in 1998, the house has fallen into disrepair, now standing as a quiet monument to a life well lived, but a legacy that risks being forgotten. Esther Rolle passed away on November 17, 1998, in Los Angeles at age 78 after battling diabetes. Before her death, she made a heartfelt request to be buried at Westview Community Cemetery in Pompano Beach, one of South Florida's oldest black cemeteries, showing her deep connection to her roots. When Esther Rolle passed away, her net worth was estimated at around $1 million. While this may seem modest by today's Hollywood standards, it represented something far more valuable, a career built on integrity rather than commercialism. During her peak years, she earned between $25,000 and $35,000 per episode of Good Times, substantial money for that era, especially for a black woman in Hollywood. Unlike many stars, she lived modestly, focusing on community impact rather than accumulating wealth. Her true fortune wasn't measured in dollars, but in the barriers she broke and the lives she touched. Today, Esther Rolle is remembered not just as a beloved sitcom star, but as a fierce advocate for authentic representation. Her efforts to challenge stereotypes and promote meaningful portrayals continue to inspire artists and activists. She proved that sometimes the most important victories are the ones that cost you the most. Her story reminds us that real change requires sacrifice, and that the people willing to make those sacrifices are the ones who truly change the world. In an industry that often prioritizes profit over principle, Esther Rolle stood as a beacon of integrity, showing that success doesn't have to come at the expense of your values. As we continue to discuss representation and diversity in entertainment, her example remains as relevant as ever. She showed us that it's not enough to simply be in the room. You have to be willing to speak up, challenge harmful practices, and demand better, even when it's difficult. Esther Rolle's abandoned home may be crumbling, but her legacy continues to inspire new generations of artists and activists who understand that authentic representation isn't just about entertainment, it's about dignity, respect, and the power to change hearts and minds.